Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. It's January 8th, 2025. Jay Opetaia delivered. The under 10.5 hit. You had several rounds to spare. We all understand that Nyika was not going to make it to the next round after he hit the canvas. That fight, the Opetaia-Nyika fight, is a special moment for boxing. Let's talk about one particular exchange. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just point out, Americans need to consider the fact that this fight had a lot going on beneath the surface. Right here in the States, we think of Australia and New Zealand as two friendly countries from the same part of the world. They're not. Folks, you have an active rivalry going on between the two countries. Right? The New Zealand folks, they look at the Australian folks as a different entity. It's not all the same country. Understand, too, both Opetaia and Nyika went to the Olympic Games. Right? Nyika, from New Zealand, decorated amateur, won the Commonwealth Games twice. Understand, at heavyweight, he gets the bronze medal at the Olympic Games. So you're talking about, two guys who aren't new to boxing. They're the same age, 29 years old. They're contemporaries, right? One from Australia, the other from New Zealand. Understand, too, the audacity here. Opetaia was supposed to fight as mandatory. The mandatory suffered a broken ankle. Nyika, of course, dying at the opportunity to fight Opetaia, steps in. In other words, as dominant as Opetaia has been. And going into this fight, I'm guessing a lot of folks here have Opetaia in their top pound-for-pound list. Right? He's certainly in the top 5 or 7 in the sport. I'm sure we all heard the stories, whether it's right or wrong, right? But the story sounded credible, that Opetaia was invited to Tyson Fury's camp, and that Opetaia may have tuned up Fury to the point where they sent him home, right? That's the folklore going around in boxing. Sometimes the folklore is true, sometimes it's not. Let's just say the only reason we're listening to the folklore is because Opetaia is good enough to have you think to yourself, that sounds plausible, right? He's roughing up Tyson Fury in Tyson Fury's camp. That sounds believable, right? So let's talk about this fight, and it's fascinating because Nyika comes out, and Nyika's trying to be aggressive. But as I said in the pre-fight video, Nyika isn't a guy who can take the extra step deep in the pocket, right? This is a guy who likes a cushion between him and an opponent. So as a result, he doesn't really use his size advantage. Again, remember, this guy won an Olympic medal in the heavyweight division. Here they're fighting at cruiser. Right, so understand, Nyika is aggressive. Nyika can't really body up an opponent. He does get Opetaia over by the ropes. Right, he does throw some shots. But you didn't get the feeling that Opetaia had nowhere to go. So then you have a sequence, and it's a very important sequence. In the 4th round, right? We're handicapping fights. We're trying to figure out things. I'm just telling you that somewhere in the world, at some time, if Roberto Duran takes a look at this fourth round, he's going to think to himself, that's the way to do it. I have the highlights of this fight in my favorites folder. This is worth watching. We all know Opetaia, very hard to find his upper body in the ring. Extremely hard. We know Opetaia has some of the best legs in boxing. We know Opetaia is a southpaw. Well, just understand, in the fourth round, there is a fighter bodying up the other fighter. There is a fighter deep in the pocket who literally, I mean, not figuratively, I'm talking about literally, has his head on the other guy's shoulder. Right, folks? Jay Opetaia's head is on the right shoulder of David Nyika. Right? It's Opetaia, the shorter man, the guy with the better legs, the mover, who is crashing the pocket. Now, let me say this, and I don't say it lightly. We're going to link another fight to this. We've been here arguing for months over what exactly happened in that Daniel Dubois-Alexander Usyk fight. What I want people to do is to look at the moments before, right? It's literally the 5 seconds before Opetaia drops Nyika for the first time in this fight. You're going to notice Opetaia with his head on Nyika's shoulder. In other words, he's not only in the pocket, he's leaning on the guy. His head's right here. Just understand that he throws a couple of shots on the belt line. On the belt line of Nyika. Right, folks? At least one of those shots is lower than the shot that Daniel Dubois hit Usyk with. In other words, when we talk about looking at fights where punches were allowed on the belt line, understand this fight is one of those fights. Right? So Opetaia, like Roberto Duran, is deep in the pocket. Right? You'll notice that Nyika has his right hand, and Nyika may have been confused. That's what happens when you get popped. When you're in a fight and you're accustomed to fighting righties. Right? Understand, Nyika has Opetaia's right hand pinned. Look at the footage, right? As Opetaia has his head on Nyika's right shoulder. So then, of course, Nyika can't handle the inside. In other words, he can't handle Opetaia leaning on him. What I'm saying is the bigger man could not handle the inside grappling. So what happens next is fascinating. Nyika decides he wants to back away from the pocket. So what happens is, let's remember, he's fighting a southpaw. So he starts to back away from the pocket. Opetaia is cat quick. Opetaia quickly throws a straight left hand that misses. But as Nyika backs away, he lets go of Opetaia's right hand. And the southpaw then closes the show with a right hook up top. In other words, as soon as Nyika backs away from the pocket, as he's backing away, as he lets go of Opetaia's right hand. So understand, Nyika's hand is low. He's unguarded on this side. And this guy's not Archie Moore. He's not going to have his other hand across his head for defense. As he lets go of Opetaia's right, Opetaia throws a left, comes back up top with the right hook. Nyika goes down hard folks, this fight's effectively finished at that moment. Right? The ref knew it. By the way, kudos to the ref. This is an A-plus job. Nyika's so out of it that look at the ref. When Nyika stands back up, the ref has a conversation with him. Now, I don't know what was said, but it was clear that the third man standing in the ring was actively concerned on whether Nyika could continue. So then, of course, Opetaia is a closer. Right? Opetaia then comes over, gets Nyika up by the ropes, knocks him unconscious. Right? The punch that finally closes the show is a left hand. In other words, this is that rare fight where you're dealing with a two-handed fighter who gets knockdowns, one with his right hand and one with his left hand. Dominant performance by Jay Opetaia. Now, the reason why the sequence is important is, number one, that's how Tyson Fury should have fought Alexander Usyk. Big man, you have to throw your weight around, come inside, crowd the guy. Not only that, this shows you conclusively, it's on film, the Roberto Duran skill set that Jay Opetaia has deep in the pocket. Right? I'm just telling you, and I know. You know, Eddie Hearn is talking about Opetaia fighting Usyk a year and a half from now. You know, Opetaia should fight Usyk right now. You know, just understand, Usyk was in the 220s when he fought Tyson Fury. Opetaia has the skill set, number one, to move with Usyk. Right? That matchup wouldn't be about Usyk's legs alone. Number two, it's lefty against lefty. There wouldn't be, you know, the odd angles that benefit Usyk when he fights righties like AJ and Tyson Fury. Number three, we know Opetaia has the skill set to step deep in the pocket. The secret to this fight is that Nyika, as decorated an amateur as he is, right, isn't the big man who throws his weight around. Right? If Jay Opetaia was leaning on George Foreman, Foreman would be leaning back. You want to see a grappling match. Look at Lennox Lewis against Michael Grant. Right? There are big men who, you know, will come in and will fight dirty. Right? The Lennox Lewis fight I'm talking about, he holds Grant's head while he hits him. That's how dirty he was. Now here you have Jay Opetaia and he has his head on your shoulder rather than back straight away. The proper way to do it is to go to one side while protecting yourself. Right? You can't back away against the guy with an inside game because that's what they want you to do. Well, understand, if you're fighting Jay Opetaia and he comes inside, I don't care what the weight gap difference is. You need to understand that how you handle him leaning on you matters. I believe a George Foreman would have either pushed him away. Look at Foreman against Joe Frazier. Right? Foreman would have pushed him away far enough where, because Opetaia would be leaning back, he wouldn't have the counter ready. Right? Nyika, who has not fought the level of competition that Opetaia has fought. Opetaia has fought Maris Briedis twice. Right? Nyika makes an amateur mistake going straight back. Right? Letting go of Opetaia's right hand. Understand, Opetaia has one of boxing's best straight lefts. He also has an excellent right hook up top. That's the punch that, in my opinion, effectively ends this fight. Right? Excellent performance. Let me also say, too, You know, you see the beginning of this fight, and you see Nyika come across the ring, and, Nika's trying to show that he has a size gap on Jay Opetaia, right? Folks, understand how hard it is to deal with a guy who isn't giving you room when you need room to throw even your body shots. Right? Opetaia, as I said, this fight starts interesting. Opetaia does get stung with some hard shots early. But then Opetaia is comfortable enough to put his head on Nyika's shoulder. That effectively smothered Nyika. Right? Just understand, a Roberto Duran would have kept his hands going if Opetaia is on the inside. Would have used that as an opportunity to hit Opetaia in the body. In my opinion, Nyika, who is a crisp counterpuncher and who is great to the body from distance, didn't have the skill set to be great to the body up close when the bodies are touching, when a guy literally has his head on your shoulder. That's the difference in this fight. Opetaia has that skill set. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. In the comment section of this video, let me close by saying this. Pay close attention to Cruiserweight. You have a guy who I would put today in the Hall of Fame. He actually gave a pretty good fight to Dimitri Bivol. And he's a switch. Right? Gilberto Ramirez, in my opinion, is one of boxing's best body punchers. He knows his way inside. But understand, he's also a guy who, if he wants, can stay outside. Right? Also, in the Goulamirian fight, you'll notice he has his head up on Goulamirian's chest for extended periods in that fight. In other words, this is the guy with the jab who can lean, who can move. He fought Joe Smith, right? It's Zurdo, he's called. Gilberto Ramirez, who's actually up on his toes, moving outside, staying outside. Right? Let's just say him against Opetaia would be spectacular boxing. It would also be a unification match at Cruiserweight. Let me also say, too, I believe both guys have the skill set to go up to the heavyweight division and to cause a lot of trouble. Right? Opetaia against a heavyweight who doesn't have the foot speed to keep up with him, or who might lack the deep in the pocket skills like Nyika lacked here, would have a hard time against him. Right? Understand, Gilberto Ramirez would give anybody a hard time because he's the guy who can make adjustments and has different skills for different situations. Take a look at the highlights from this. Take a look at the entire sequence, the seconds leading up to the first knockdown in the 4th round. Look at Opetaia inside. Look at his belt line punches. Look at how Nyika is holding his right hand. Look at what happens as Nyika backs away from the pocket, going straight back. Right? This is why we watch boxing, for moments like that. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by.